Welcome to Hungry Dads, your guided tour through the delicate and often overwhelming balancing act between food indulgences and social acceptance. And now, as always, here are your hosts, Rod Budget and Hugh Gallen.
Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Hungry Dads. I'm Rod Budget.
I'm Hugh Gallen. Hello, hello.
And tonight we're going to focus on grilling. Hugh is in the market for a grill. He just moved into a new house and he's doing some research. And let's just jump in and hear about how it's going over there, Hugh.
Yeah, Rod. So I'm really going to use this podcast as an opportunity to pick your brain, lay out my concerns and questions. You are going to be the expert here today, whether you like it or not. I have never owned a grill. I think I've mentioned on prior episodes if I haven't already. I'm not much of a griller. In fact, I'm not a griller at all. But now I think I need to be. I own a house. It seems like part of the package. So I don't know what grill to get. Rod, you own the Big Green Egg.
That's correct.
Let's start there. Tell me about the Big Green Egg.
Big Green Egg, and a little background for our listeners. I was never much of a griller before moving from New York City to kind of suburbia about 4 years ago, and got the Big Green Egg pretty much as soon as we moved into the house. It's pretty big down here in the South, and a lot of people had recommended it to me. Without doing a whole lot of research, I just got one because it sounded like the thing to get. The Big Green Egg is a ceramic-style cooker that can get up to really, really high heats, and it can also smoke things on a very low heat. It's a charcoal smoker, or it's a charcoal grill. You can do steaks on it. You can do pizzas on it. There's accessories. A pizza setter is one of them. You can do like brick oven style pizzas, thin crust, which are amazing. I've done them. But the Big Green Egg is, I would say, a relatively high degree of difficulty. There's definitely a learning curve involved. I feel like now I'm comfortable with it, and it's a solid grill.
Correct me if I'm wrong. One of the keys of the Big Green Egg is that it's insulated. Am I right? It's ceramic and insulated in some way. So it's not just like a metal can or a metal cover. It's got this whole kind of environment inside of heat, right? Is that it?
That's right. It is ceramic. It's very heavy. It's got a lid that kind of has a hinge, but it lifts up. But it's a heavy, heavy lid. I mean, when you close it, it's got some force behind it. It's got a gasket that seals it pretty tightly. That's what lets it get up to the really high heats. So it's premium. It's ceramic. It's heavy. And that's what lets it really get up to those high, high heats if you want to do something that way.
Have you ever been to the website for the Big Green Egg, Rod?
I have.
Okay. I'm going to read something from their description. It's from a page called The History of Big Green Egg and Civilization, and this is just part of it. Evidence of these early prototypes of the Big Green Egg have been found by archaeologists in the ruins of nearly every civilization around the world. So far I'm like, okay, this is some kind of like, ancient cooking system. And then it goes on to say, except the Propanians, who preferred to scorch their meals using volcanic gases, and the drive-throughians, who ate all their meals from takeout and quickly vanished from planet Earth. I think this is clearly a joke, I think, or the owner is crazy. Either way, I like it. This is the real website, and it's the real quote-unquote history of the Big Green Egg. I know this Big Green Egg has a cult status, but it sounds like there's almost a cockiness of the person who sells this. He's like, this thing's so good, my website doesn't even need to be serious. You want it anyway.
Yeah, that's funny. As you were reading that, I hadn't seen that part of the website before. And as you started reading, I said, oh, I guess that's a serious thing. But then he kind of makes a joke out of it. So, yeah, it's a little quirky. There's definitely a cult mindset and a little bit of arrogance out there of if you're not cooking on the Big Green Egg, you're just not doing it right and your food's going to taste horrible, which honestly is the thing that I don't like about owning the Big Green Egg. We've talked about food snobbery in the past, and I feel like it's almost a degree of food snobbery in that my grill is so good that if you're not cooking like this, your food's just not going to taste as good as mine. In my opinion, the stuff that I do on the Big Green Egg does taste excellent, and you can do a lot of stuff a lot of different ways, but at the same time, some people don't like seared steaks or super smoky tasting burgers. So the mindset, the kind of cult following is a little annoying to me, honestly.
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't know it had such a cult following until I started looking around a little bit. But one thing I liked about it, hearing from you and then looking at some of the online presence, I actually did like the quirkiness of it. As I said, I'm not presenting myself as a serious griller. So part of it was this like form over function kind of idea. It just looks different. It looks unique. It seems like it would engender conversation and be a different way to grill than the way everyone else grills.
For sure. I mean, it's called the Big Green Egg after all. And it is. It's quirky. It's fun. I think especially you're up in the Northeast and it's not nearly as big up there as it is down here. So I think it would be even more of a conversation piece up there because not many people have heard of it.
So Rod, what I'll try to do is I'll try to put aside what are clearly cosmetic preferences that don't matter at all. And let's just talk about the actual functionality. So on the website, the creator of the Big Green Egg, Ed Fisher, mentions the Propanians. And he talks about how they scorch their meals. What he's referring to is the use, I presume, of a propane grill, favorite of Hank Hill, of King of the Hill. Propane seems to have a lot of attractive features to it. I'm talking bare bones here, by the way. Take this as someone who really just started learning about grills as of a week ago and didn't really give it much thought. A propane system seems pretty no fuss, no muss. And I didn't even know when we talked about the Big Green Egg before, Rod, that it was charcoal. I just didn't even know. I didn't think one way or the other.
Yeah, I think gas grill comes down to convenience versus a lot of people will say charcoal is a little more work, but it tastes better. There are more things you can do it with high heat versus low heat and smoking. But gas grill, I think it's obviously way more convenient. And that's kind of my overall thesis with the Big Green Egg, and my overall recommendation is it kind of comes back to the delicate balancing act we talk about a lot. I would say the Big Green Egg is a balancing act between more work, a higher learning curve, versus how much do you think the food tastes better, and different ways that you can prepare food and different foods you can make. You can't do a brick oven pizza on a gas grill. You just can't do it. You can't smoke a brisket on 200 degrees for 18 hours on a gas grill. So that's kind of the advantages that the Big Green Egg has. But the Big Green Egg, it requires a lot of cleaning. It only uses air for the temperature. So there's a vent at the top and a vent at the bottom. The more air you let in, the hotter it gets. And it takes some getting used to. If you get it up to like 500, 600 degrees by accident when you only want to grill at 350, it takes a long time to get it back down. And sometimes it's hard to get the heat up if it's humid outside or raining. You know, the elements kind of play into it, which I personally like. I'm kind of a weather guy. I like that aspect of it. If it's windy and dry in the winter, you can get that fire up like that. That's kind of the trade-off. With the Big Green Egg, you can do more things. I do think it being a conversation piece has some appeal to it. You can cook at really high heat. You can smoke things on really low heat. You can do pizzas. A gas grill, you can't do all that, but you press a button and you turn the knob to the temperature you want, and that's that. So that's really the balancing act.
Right. It is just kind of another version of, we talk here a lot. We ask the question, is it worth it? And a lot of times we're asking, is a certain junk food, how tasty is it versus, how unhealthy it is or how hard it is to get. And you're right. This is another version of that is it worth it test. How much do you enjoy the flavor of the charcoal versus all the work that goes into it? Now, for me, in assessing that, the thing I'm immediately thinking about, Rod, you can definitely relate to me here. The first thing I think about is, okay, I got 2 young kids. You have 3 young kids. Grilling ideally wouldn't be a chore. It would be a solution, a quick and easy way to cook something without a lot of mess and without a lot of fuss. And so I go to saying, I'm just going to get a propane grill, keep it simple. If I get the Big Green Egg, I'm probably just not going to use it as much. So honestly, at this point, I'm leaning more towards a propane grill, accepting that I'm going to sacrifice a lot of the fun and a lot of the flavor.
That's certainly understandable. I will say that I have 3 kids, and I still use the Big Green Egg quite a bit. I would say twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. Now, I'm not always doing exotic things. We have some staples. I should also mention that Mrs. Budget is a big fan of the egg and the taste that the egg imparts. But we'll do salmon one night a week. We'll do burgers every once in a while. I've even done hot dogs on the Big Green Egg, which I'm sure is a faux pas to the Big Green Egg enthusiasts. Not everything is difficult or hard or tricky. The salmon I've got down to a science because I've probably done it 100 times by now. And you don't have to cook it at a ridiculous heat one way or the other. You throw it on there for 15 minutes and marinate it for 10 minutes, and it tastes great. So it doesn't have to be hard, but again, it just comes down to how much you enjoy the flavor of the food. And myself and Mrs. Budget, I will say I think it tastes much better on the Big Green Egg. I like kind of the smoky flavor. If you listen back to our Thanksgiving episode way back from last Thanksgiving, I did our turkey on the Big Green Egg and used some apple smoking, and it came out, I will say, pretty well. I understand your concerns, and there is a learning process.
Rod, walk me through the steps. Give me a sense of timing on. Let's talk burgers. Let's talk a burger night. I think that's a middle of the road preparation item. Let's not talk about actually preparing the burgers, but once the burgers are round and made, and you have your own burger maker, if I recall, that makes uniform round,
yes,
and thickness of patties,
flavorless patties.
What if those are already made? What are the steps to get your burgers off the Big Green Egg and then the Big Green Egg cleaned and completed? Walk me through the entire process.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Let's just focus on the Big Green Egg. So I prefer to clean the Big Green Egg just with a grill brush. You have to clean a gas grill, so there's really no difference. I do it at the end of each cook because the grill's hot and the stuff just comes off really easily. So I'm going in with a clean grill because I do it at the end of the previous cook. You might have to load it down with a little more charcoal, but it's a pretty big pot, if you will, a pretty big ceramic grill area that will hold the charcoal. So you really only have to fill it, depending on what you're cooking, every 2 or 3 times, because a lot of charcoal won't burn. It'll kind of be up on the sides and just kind of push it towards the middle.
Is there a hole? If you put it right on, you open up the lid and pour it right down, or is there a hole on the side? How does the charcoal get down there?
You do open up the lid. There's just a hinge, and the lid kind of opens back, and you take the grate out, and then there's just kind of a ceramic bowl down there with a hole in the bottom of the bowl, which you never really see once the charcoal's in there, because the charcoals on top of it are ash, but that's what allows the air to come in through the bottom. The air comes in also through the top. The lid that you lift off has what's called a daisy wheel on top of it. It's a patented thing that lets you, open it very, very slightly, which will make the fire not so hot, or all the way, and the fire will get really hot. So back to the steps. You might have to put some charcoal in there, and then you will need either a match or one of those big long lighters. That's what we have. You will need some sort of fire starter, which I didn't really know about before this whole Big Green Egg thing. But they're just little cubes that you light them and they get the thing going. And I have a box of like 300 of them I bought in bulk, and they last like 2 years, and they're cheap. So that's not that hard. You kind of put the cube fire starter down into the charcoal, take the lighter, light the cube, and then you keep the lid open and open the bottom vent all the way because you want the air to get to the fire and get it going. Depending on the weather conditions and how much charcoal you have in there, this is frustrating from time to time with the Big Green Egg. Sometimes it takes a while for the fire to get up to the temperature you want it to. Sometimes it doesn't take that long. And
maximum time.
A maximum time if you're trying to do something at a really hot heat and for whatever reason things aren't going well. Well, I should say there have been a couple of times where I just haven't been able to get it up. Like I gave up, which is obviously frustrating. But that was kind of in the beginning, and you practice these things. And I learned that the charcoal I was using probably had already been burnt too much and just wasn't catching on. So a maximum time, assuming you're using enough charcoal, 20-25 minutes. I would say an average time if you're grilling something like 350 or 400 is 5-10 minutes. And sometimes if it's windy and you have a lot of charcoal in there, it could be 3, 4, 5 minutes. So there's quite a bit of variability.
Does it have a thermometer on it that shows you the temperature?
There's a built-in thermometer in the dome, which is in the lid that you lift up. Burgers, they don't take very long. I have a meat thermometer, which I use. Put the burgers on, close the lid, 3 or 4 minutes, flip them, another 3 or 4 minutes, and they're done. Open the lid back up, taking them off, and there you have it. They've got a beautiful smoky flavor, a little pink in the middle perhaps, some cheese on top at the end if you want cheese. That's all there is to it.
So that's a standard burger grilling, which I think is a nice even test for what a propane grill can do and what a Big Green Egg can do. And we're talking about the Big Green Egg, and I think we should keep, but there are other brands apparently. It's a ceramic style grill. One of the reasons I would lean back in favor of a Big Green Egg or the like is because it can serve as a smoker.
Yes.
As other things. Now, you live in Florida, and you can use your grill all the time. And one thing I don't know the answer to, I don't know if you do know this, I live in New York. I'm going to have cold weather months. I wouldn't be opposed to using my grill in cold weather months. Can you use a propane grill in cold weather months? Can you use a big green egg in cold weather months? Do you have any idea? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see why not. And I actually think the big green egg will probably even work better up there in the cold weather because it's more about humidity with it. And down here in Florida, I honestly have some trouble if it's raining or very humid because, again, it's just the inflow of oxygen. And if it's windy and colder and drier out, the fire gets hotter quicker.
Right.
So I think it would actually, the big green egg would perform better up there in the wintertime than it does for me down here when it's hot and humid most of the year.
Interesting, because one of the things that would sell me on the big green egg is Thanksgiving. I'd love to be able to do my turkey on a grill, and I don't think your standard propane grill is going to give me that opportunity. So that would be a big benefit. And then I think I would also, once I got the hang of it, I would be, buying various large pieces of meat to throw in there and have it cook, again, all seasons. And even dead of winter, I would probably want to try to use it.
I think that's one of the big benefits of the egg that I probably didn't touch on enough. Smoking something, a big piece of meat, low and slow, you just can't do that with really almost anything else. And it's pretty easy. I mean, you just don't let as much air in. You get the temperature way down. The only challenge is you have to really load it with charcoal, and you may even have to refill the charcoal at some point during the cook, which isn't a huge hassle, but the charcoal, if it sits there for a day, it's going to all burn down eventually. Yeah, I mean, I've done Boston butts, which I didn't even know what it was before I got a big green egg. It's actually a pork shoulder. It's just called a Boston butt, which is kind of funny.
I went to a grilling internet forum with the question of basically the big green egg. My first grill purchase, is the big green egg worth it? And I got a lot of responses. I was pleasantly surprised at how many opinions people had.
It's a passionate subject.
It was, and it got divisive, and there were definitely, you mentioned before, kind of the cult of the big green egg, which I had no idea there was. There are real enthusiasts of the big green egg who will speak about the big green egg unabashedly and basically just explain to you that there's no better option. There's others who, I wouldn't say they swear against the big green egg, but they basically say it's very expensive and there's nothing it can't do that other grills can't do. One piece of advice I got more than once was, don't buy the big green egg right away. Buy yourself a regular kettle type grill, charcoal grill, and start working with that to see if you're even gonna bother. And then if you do, maybe graduate to the big green egg.
I think that's kind of advice you can use for any big item where there's something cheaper. I think that's more like make sure you're going to grill it all before you buy a big green egg because it is higher priced. I don't really buy that argument because you're not going to get the same taste and flavor or flexibility out of a non-ceramic charcoal grill.
Yeah, and I think it's almost, for me, again, it's, the expense is definitely a consideration, make no mistake, but I almost feel like if it's not a good one that makes it enjoyable, I probably won't do it as much, whereas with the big green egg, it does seem like maybe that investment would make me use it. Although that's kind of like saying once I buy a gym membership, I'll go to the gym more often,
right.
Only in the exact opposite and much more delicious version of that.
Honestly, Hugh, there's part of me that just wants to scream, get the big green egg. It's great. It's excellent. You're going to love it. But at the same time, it's a niche thing, and it requires work, and it's a higher price. It's not cheap, but deliciousness, I think the food coming off there tastes delicious.
All right, well, I've got my work cut out for me. I think I just have to make that threshold decision first as to whether I want to kind of go the easy peasy route of propane where I can kind of throw it on, throw it off, utilitarian, get the food cooked, get the family fed, and maybe move on with other things, or if I want to take on the big green egg as part of a hobby, part of a lifestyle, it sounds like. And you are definitely selling the lifestyle hard. It sounds to me like you'd love to have a brother in arms.
That would be great. We could talk about it every week.
This would turn into the Big Green Egg podcast, wouldn't it?
It would. We'd compare what we made over the past week.
All right. Well, Rod and listeners, follow up with me in coming episodes. I will let you know where I land on this grill question. I will say day by day I change my mind. Minute by minute I change my mind.
Hungry Dads.
Speaking of grilling, Rod, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about a food project I took on actually several weeks ago. This is, I think, kind of my follow-up, my second act. My first act was the turducken, which we covered in our Thanksgiving episode. And now I took on a new challenge, and it was something I saw on the internet, kind of an internet legend that I'd seen around, but
Chupacabra.
It was more delicious than the chupacabra, which is very delicious. Chupacabra with some chipotle chupacabra. Oh. This was a bacon hot dog turtle burger. There's no turtle in it, to be clear. It's a burger and some hot dogs and some bacon all put together in the shape of a turtle, actually. And very, very simply, you take a burger and you wrap it up in bacon with like a lattice. You weave the bacon together and then you cover it in the burger. And then you stick hot dogs in 6 different holes on the edge of the burger, on the perimeter of the burger. One's a head, one's a tail, and then there's 4 legs. This whole thing comes together, and then it goes on a grill, and it comes off like a little turtle. Totally edible and totally delicious. I saw this thing online. I said, oh, that's really, really cool. I could never do that. And it turns out I was probably right. I could never do it because, as I said before, I'm not good at grilling, but I have a dear friend and neighbor who is excellent in grilling, and I recruited him, and essentially he took over while I played Igor to his Dr. Frankenstein, and we created these hot dog bacon turtle burgers. I'm not going to go on and on the podcast about it. It's really a visual thing. If you go to our website, www.hungrydads.com, you'll see a drop down for our articles and essays, and you can see a video and a step-by-step of the bacon hot dog turtle burger. I think one of the most remarkable little bits about it is after you assemble the whole thing, you've got a burger wrapped in bacon, which should sound delicious to anybody who's listening. And then you add in the hot dogs. And the cool little thing is you take the hot dogs and you snip the little legs right on the edge, like just like a eighth of an inch. And then when it cooks, it all shrinks and you get little toes. And your turtle has little toes. So he's got a meaty inside and an outer shell of bacon, and then turtle hot dog legs and feet. The whole thing's very cute. What's funny is as cute as it is, I didn't give it to my kids or show it to my kids. It's a huge, massive, salty thing. Wow. So this was really this was meant for a man to eat. And we did. We made 2 of them. My friend and I each assembled one. He went first, and he was kind of the trailblazer, and I followed his lead. There's a lot of little tips about grilling within there. Once you assemble it, you throw it in the freezer just to let it firm up a little bit. It cooks in as one giant turtle. You don't assemble it cooked. You assemble it raw. The trick, as I learned, was to use indirect heat and then direct heat, kind of in alternating ways, and with more time on the indirect heat because the bacon is going to burn very quickly. But a long period of indirect heat had everything cooked through just perfectly.
So are those 6 full-sized hot dogs, or are they cut into pieces?
It's cut into pieces. So it's 3 full hot dogs, 6 different halves to make it up. That's still
quite impressive. So it's 3 hot dogs, a bunch of bacon, and a giant lob of hamburger meat.
Yep. And I'll say the hot dog was the least enjoyable part of it. It was good, but that bacon-wrapped hot dog was delicious. And I'd say, putting the turtle aside, I'd invite anyone to at least do a bacon-wrapped burger at some point. The weaving of the bacon was fun and pretty easy. Getting it wrapped around was fun and pretty easy.
Hungry Dads! Shifting gears a little bit, Hugh and I have written some eulogies tonight to some food establishments that are no longer with us. We thought this might be a good, potentially reoccurring segment of loved ones from our past that are no longer with us for whatever reason. So tonight I'm just going to jump right in with a heartfelt eulogy to Showbiz Pizza Place, Arlington, Texas location. Our listeners are probably familiar, most of them, with Showbiz. It was a big establishment in the 80s and early 90s, kind of coming out of the whole Chuck E. Cheese craze. The Showbiz Pizza Place had an arcade, it had a band, it had a ball pit, it had pizza buffet, it had fun. I will mention, for our listeners out there who were Showbiz Pizza, even if you're not a Showbiz Pizza fan, I think it would be interesting. But if you are, you definitely have to check out a documentary called Rock-afire Explosion, and it's about the band. If you know showbiz, you'll know Billy Bob was the bear with like the overalls. It was the animatronic band that played music.
And the name of the band was the Rockfire Explosion, right?
Oh, yes, what a cool name. The name of the band
cool
and
name.
The documentary. And I don't want to give too much away, but basically the Rockfire Explosion lives on. They were at one point kind of abandoned, but they've been rescued. And I'll just leave it at that.
One final never-ending tour in a man's garage.
With that, a eulogy to Showbiz Arlington, Texas location. It was a great privilege for me to have met Showbiz Arlington, Texas location, and I can still remember that initial encounter very clearly, although it was about 30 years ago. I recall that a gentle yet rambunctious pizza arcade had sprung from a previously abandoned parking lot near our local mall. It was as if weeds had magically transformed into pepperonis. Beer bottles had morphed into a fun-loving band of hillbilly animal misfits, and abandoned shopping carts banded together to become arcade games. In his early years, Showbiz Arlington, Texas location tried to enlist in the military, but due to his problems with eyesight and general lack of mobility, he was not accepted, thankfully for us. He was instead forced to pursue his second loves of animatronics, animals, small rides, mediocre pizza, pools of plastic balls, and tokens. Showbiz Arlington, Texas location was always an avid coin collector. In his prime, Showbiz Arlington, Texas location was the life of every party with groundbreaking arcade games such as Mortal Kombat, Q*bert, and Paperboy. The Rockfire Explosion was laying down some mean beats, and a buffet of pizza stretched as far as the eye could see. Showbiz Arlington, Texas location was always a happy, contented man who never wanted much out of life other than the simple, quiet pleasures, like Pop-A-Shot, Whack-A-Mole, and anything else with flashing lights and blaring computer-generated music. He was a very sociable person and had many friends. He was well-liked and respected, and he was someone you could trust and rely on, someone you could confide in and ask for advice. I recently heard a story from Showbiz's good friend Ronald McDonald, Fort Worth, Texas location. It seems Ronald was considering getting rid of the fillet of fish sometime in the mid-'80s, but Showbiz discouraged it, telling Ronald, "Kids need that fish fillet, Ronnie. Where else are they going to go to find cheese melted on a deep-fried cod flank?" To which Ronald replied, "I don't know, Showbiz. Why don't you offer the fillet of fish instead, brother?" To which Showbiz reportedly said, "Damn, Ron, I never thought about it. Would it work in a pizza buffet format?" To which Ronald replied, "Nah, I guess not." Then, and this is where Showbiz shows his true colors, he turns to Ronald in a very serious way and says, "You're right, it wouldn't quite work." I think that story best sums up the kind of beauty and grace that Showbiz Arlington, Texas location showed throughout his life. Showbiz Arlington, Texas location died in his sleep one late night in 1992. I hadn't seen him in many years, but I had heard his health was failing. The buffet had contracted to a single pepperoni pizza. The band was breaking up due to big egos and various addictions. Be that as it may, I know Showbiz Arlington, Texas location has been somewhat missed by some of the people who knew and loved him. He's in a better place now, imploded into a cloud of asbestos for all kids at the adjacent mall to enjoy for the rest of eternity.
Wow. Wow. Rod,
that was tough.
Rod, that
tough.
was touching and impressive. And if you heard a chuckle from this side of the mic, it was only because there's a phenomenon when someone's exceedingly sad. Sometimes they just can't help but laugh.
It's nervous.
And it's the nervous laughter, being touched with the emotion. You clearly loved Showbiz Pizza, Arlington, Texas location.
Yeah.
It shows. And
I don't know how much more I can talk about it, but the laughing I get. I mean, I do that sometimes, but
now this tribute that
I feel drained.
I have to inquire just a little bit. This tribute is obviously from a personal experience. You shared some special times there yourself. When did you learn that the Showbiz Pizza Arlington, Texas location had gone away?
I think I may have first learned about it while I was in New York City, maybe 20 years later, through talking to a friend or something, an old high school buddy maybe, said, "Hey, I got some rough news, buddy. Are you sitting down?" And I said, Oh man, yeah, break it to me. And he said, showbiz, Arlington, Texas location's gone, man, imploded.
It's tough being
and it was tough,
so far away and getting that news, feeling like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, there was nothing I could do about it. I still think about it quite a bit, but I'm getting over it. There's still days where that's all I can really think about. But the skee ball, really, just spent so many days rolling that ball into the hole and never getting it into the center, but still getting a lot of tickets, and then getting a ping pong mallet thing. That's childhood right there.
Well, obviously this episode is going to be a little bit of a downer. I have my entry.
Yeah, I heard Hugh, you had some rough times as well.
I had a loss as well. My entry in tonight's Remembrances is for the Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising in Goodlettsville, Tennessee.
Wow. I'm already emotional.
No longer with us. I visited the Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising in the summer of 2002. My friends and I stumbled upon it on a trip to Nashville to see a friend. It wasn't our original destination, but it was undoubtedly our destiny. The Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony in April of 1987. The museum's inspired curator and creator started as a boy, gathering cans from the side of the road. His passion spawned the largest beer and soda container collection the world has ever known. Just imagine our excitement. Over 36,000 beverage cans and bottles. What could be more exciting to three young single men in their prime? Nothing, that's what. All shapes, sorts, and sizes. The venerable exhibit claimed to host the first beer can ever made. The first soda can, too. Classic brands, forgotten brands, generic brands, local brands, foreign brands, antique, contemporary, all there. Lined delicately on custom-made shelves, narrow aisles packed tight, we were literally surrounded side to side, floor to ceiling. And it had a gift shop. The whole thing was like a little slice of heaven. Beverage containers carefully organized by year, brand, and type. You could spend hours. We did. The vast display brought you in and hugged you tight. Like you belonged there. You see, there was no glass, no velvet rope blocking you from its meticulously arranged cylindrical artifacts. You could get right up close and even pick them up if you wanted. But the reverence was palpable. If you touch, do so respectably. We did. The Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising served as an inspiration for authors. Over its storied career, it was featured in America's Strangest Museums, A Traveler's Guide, Soda Spectre magazine, issue 59, and the unforgettable Romantic Tennessee by Carol and Dan Thalmer. In its 20 years of service, the Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising hosted what I am assured were at least dozens of enthralled visitors, drawn like moths to light into the sleepy hamlet of Goodlettsville, Tennessee. I only visited once, but the memories and experience will stay with me the rest of my life. It's rumored that the collection was up for sale. I only hope these glass and aluminum treasures were sold to a caring party that might reinstate this beacon of Americana, so that I can someday bring my children to experience the gallery of drink and packaging and labeling. The thought of it being hauled away to some recycling center? Well, that would break my heart. The dictionary defines museum as a building in which objects of historical, scientific, or artistic cultural interest are stored and exhibited. Well, the Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising was that. But it was something more. It was a tribute to American thirst. It was a study on liquid containment. It was a beacon of hope. I will always remember the Museum of Beverage Containers and Advertising, and I'd like to close with a song.
If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you.
Hungry Dads! Visit our website at hungrydads.com. Follow us on Twitter at hungry_dads. This has been a Hungry Dads production.
Can't get it up, Rod. It's okay.
Yeah,
you just relax.
I couldn't get it up.
Try again another time.
I was trying a little too hard, I think. But yeah, there have been a couple of times where I just couldn't get it off. And I lost my train of thought.
Of course you did.